Good morning. Today's proceedings are going to be broadcast with a 10-minute delay after the event being described. Those with electronic devices may use them to report what they have heard in the hearing room, but only after 10 minutes have elapsed since the event that they're reporting. Devices may not be used for recording or photography. May the witness be sworn, please.
Repeat after me. I do solemnly, sincerely and truly, declare and affirm
that the evidence
I shall give
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
truth.
I understand that it is possible that you may need a break in the middle of your evidence, other than the one that we normally have,
Yes.
And that a method has been devised for you
Yes.
to indicate it. Please don't hesitate to do so.
I won't. Thank you.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Please can you state your full name?
Lois Amelia Austin.
You gave a witness statement to this inquiry dated the 8th of April 2025. Please could we have up on screen UCPI 37774. Do you recognise that as your witness statement?
Yes.
It consists of 78 pages that's signed and dated by you on the last page. Can you confirm that the detail and the contents are true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, I can confirm that.
That will stand as your written evidence of the inquiry. The witness statement addresses your political life that you now understand was reported on by an undercover officer, namely HN43 Peter Francis. And is it right that you knew him in his cover identity as Peter Johnson?
I think actually I knew him more as Peter Daly.
Peter Daly?
Yeah.
Did you also know him as Peter Black at all?
I think so. I think it was probably interchangeable at the time. He was known as Peter Black, Peter Daly, or Peter really.
Just Peter?
On occasions, yeah.
Is it right that that wasn't unusual in the political groups you were moving in at the time for people to have different names?
Not really. I didn't really put much store on it, to be honest. I just knew him as Peter Daly mainly, and that he was there at events that I was organising, involved with, quite often in the background, and that's what I remember.
We also know that you were reported on by HN104 Carlo Soracchi. Did you know him as Carlo Neri?
Yes.
Did you know him by any other name?
No, I just knew him as Carlo Neri.
There is a cipher list in front of you, so some of the people that we'll be talking about today do have ciphers, so we'll be careful about names that you might wish to comment on. I'll ask you some questions about your witness statement and go into detail in particular parts. Firstly, I'd like to start off with your background.
Okay.
I understand that you came to be involved in the field of social justice and anti-racism activity from a young age.
Yeah.
Is it right that you grew up and went to school in Welling?
Yeah, so I grew up in Welling. I went to school in Welling. The maps and the footage that we've seen is very familiar to me. I literally do know it like the back of my hand. And I was politically active really from the age of around 14 or 15. My sister and I were involved in setting up getting involved with and then organising and leading the Bexley Heath Labour Party Young Socialists, which encompassed all of that, the area of Bexley, Welling, Sidcup. And in fact, my sister was younger than me. She actually wasn't really allowed to join. She just used to come along. She was about 12 or 13. So from a very young age, we were involved in all sorts of political activism like anti-apartheid, CND. I remember going on big demonstrations for anti-apartheid demonstrations. So yeah, from a very young age. And I come from a political family. My mum and dad were socialists. My mum's family have a strong labour movement tradition.
And is that what influenced you in your own politics then going forward?
Yes, it did. It did influence me. And I was particularly influenced, like many, many young people, by the miners' strike in 1984, 1985, and seeing the scenes on the television of the way the miners were treated, the terrible biased reporting, the police brutality that they suffered, then in fact, I think at the age of about 15, I joined everything that I possibly could. I would have joined the women at Greenham Common if my parents had allowed me to go. So we literally, my sister and I wrote off to join everything that we could. But it was members of the Labour Party Young Socialists that we met in Bexley Heath Shopping Centre because they were petitioning against Margaret Thatcher's YTS conscription, and we signed the petition, and that's how we got actively involved.
And around 1985, did you help to organise the national school student strike in relation to the YTS scheme?
Yes, I did, and I was on national TV. I was interviewed by Frank Boff. I don't know if people remember Frank Boff, and on Breakfast TV. And then I was on Radio 1, interviewed by Janice Long. And I think we organised, we said at the time around 250,000 young people who came out on protests and rallies and demonstrations against the YTS becoming a compulsory scheme. Yeah.
Around 1986, 87, did you take up some political positions in the groups that you were involved with? The Labour Party Young Socialists Regional Committee, were you on that?
Yeah, so I was on the London Labour Party Young Socialists Regional Committee. I think just after that, I was on the NEC Youth Committee of the Labour Party. So I was on the Youth Committee, NEC Youth Committee of the Labour Party with people like Larry Whitty, who was the National Secretary of the Labour Party at the time, General Secretaries of Trade Unions. So I was the youth representative on the NEC Youth Subcommittee.
I'd like to ask you about the British National Party and their presence in Welling. So in 1987, what was going on in Welling in relation to the BNP around that time?
So the British National Party moved into Welling in 1987. I have been asked in conversations, why did they choose Welling? And I think it's because there was a little bit of history of far-right activity in that part of South East London. I can remember in 1981 a National Front demonstration that marched along the High Street at the bottom of our turning, and me and my friends were all on our bikes watching several hundred skinheads come marching through our area. And I think that they thought that it was an area that would potentially be a good breeding ground for them because it's very white, very working class. And they moved in 1987. As soon as they moved in, and we became aware that these people that had supposedly set up this bookshop, it was never a bookshop, it was always a political headquarters, it was always, they orchestrated their campaign of racism and violence from what was their headquarters. As soon as they moved in, then the Bexley Heath Labour Party Young Socialists that I was a chair of, my sister was the secretary, we called a meeting of absolutely everybody that we could, who we knew in the trade unions, so NUPI, NowGo, the TNG, all the unions in the area that were active. There was a very vibrant labour movement actually in that area. They used to call the East Wickham ward, which you've seen East Wickham as an area on the map, they used to call that, I think they used to call it Little Russia because there were so many trade unions and socialists that lived in the area. I remember Tony Benn coming to speak at my secondary school and stuff like that. We got everybody together, mainly labour movement activists. We contacted the Greenwich Action Committee Against Racist Attacks, highly respected anti-racist organisation in Greenwich that was organising to protect and defend the community, and also the Greenwich Commission for Racial Equality. We worked very well with them, very, very good coalition that we was able to put together. And we also sent fax messages to MPs that we thought would be supportive of our cause. So Tony Benn, I remember Jeremy Corbyn, I remember sending a message to Diane Abbott and asking her to come to the area and address one of our meetings. So we did all of that work.
And that coalition, sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
that was called the Greenwich and Bexley Labour Movement Campaign Against Racism and Fascism, was it?
It was.
It's a long
I think
name.
the longest name in Labour movement history, but that's what we set up, yeah. And it was deliberate because we wanted it to be about the working class, working people and the trade unions, and that the trade unions were saying no to the BNP in their headquarters. And actually getting the trade unions involved meant that we could then, and I did this at a very young age, we could go and speak at NUPI meetings, NowGo meetings. We could speak to the Trades Council and say, do you know that the BNP, an avowedly, openly fascist organisation, has moved into our area. They are on a mainly residential street, and all of us, it's incumbent upon all of us, particularly the trade unions, to try to get them out.
Was there a change in terms of the political activity in the area once the BNP had moved into Welling?
Yes, there was, and it was noticeable. So the Greenwich Action Committee Against Racist Attacks and the Commission for Racial Equality, who I said we work really closely with, they within a few years of them moving in, I think they recorded that there'd been a 200% increase in racist attacks. We were working with those organisations, for example, in the street opposite one of the streets off Upper Wickham Lane. There was an Asian family the children were being abused, graffiti on their walls, bricks through their windows, and we worked with them to organise basically a rota of people visiting them, coming in and out of the house, because we wanted the BNP to see that this was a family that had support, the whole of the community, black, white and Asian, and we made sure there was people in and out. Sometimes people had to stay there overnight because we wanted to send a signal that this is a family that's been protected, it's been defended by the community, and you need to stay away.
What were the police and the council doing in relation to that?
Well, that's a very good question, because I think I've seen in some of the evidence that's been given to the inquiry that, and I was trying to add it up, but I think we organised 27 lobbies of Bexley Council. So the idea that there was just big demonstrations and that's all we did and we didn't try to do anything else is nonsense. So they moved in 1987. So between 1987 and 1993, we organised a lobby of every full Bexley Council meeting. We used councillors that were, they were sort of very good active councillors, Labour Party councillors, that would put motions down on the agenda. It was a Tory council, asking the council to act, to use the Race Relations Act, to use planning legislation to close the BNP headquarters down. So we would put motions on the council at the council meeting. We would present petitions, and then we would lobby outside. So we organised 27, I think, in total, lobbies of Bexley Council, petitions, motions. And also, if I can say, I'm going on a bit, but if I can just say this, if you stand on Welling Corner and you set up a stall and you ask, and you're 18, 19, my sister was 16, and then other young people that we got involved from our schools and our colleges, and you're petitioning to close down the BNP headquarters, that's quite dangerous. That's not an easy thing to do, because C18 were active in the area, who we know...
By C18 you mean Combat
18, who we know are violent, extremely racist, fascist organisation. Many of them have criminal records and have gone to prison for violence. I've never been convicted of violence. We were young, we were probably a bit naive. We stood on the street corners in that area, and also members of the Black and Asian community stood with us, which is a very brave thing to do. We petitioned, we door knocked, we put thousands thousands of leaflets through letterboxes explaining to the community what we were doing and why we wanted them to get involved in our campaign, because it was about politically educating people about what was going on, raising the understanding and building a big community campaign.
You say in your witness statement that Bexley Council, the police and the local press suggested that the left wing political groups were just as bad as the right wing. What do you say about that?
Well, at the time it was very, very, very upsetting because, as my mother-in-law says, we were on the side of the angels. We were doing the right thing. We were saying, these people are dangerous, they're really nasty, we need to get rid of them. And then we had the Bexley Tory Council saying, the left need to shut up. The left need to stop going on about this. Why is the left giving the British National Party oxygen? And we said, because there are racist attacks. And as we know, 4 young black men were murdered. Everybody knows a lot about Stephen Lawrence, and that's right that they know about Stephen Lawrence, and it was absolutely awful and horrific. And as I said, I come from that area, know many of the black families close to the Lawrence family and all of that. But there were 3 other young black men murdered as well: Roland Adams, Rohit Dougal, Orville Blair. So black men were being murdered, and I know why they were being murdered in that area, because the British National Party were going into youth clubs like the Lovell Youth Centre, which I used to go to as a teenager, which is probably 20 yards from where the BNP headquarters was. The BNP were going into there, or they were standing outside and giving out leaflets, and they were recruiting young people to the British National Party, and they were inciting racist attack, racial hatred, division and racist attacks. So
is it right though that you don't, there's no evidence that the BNP members were responsible for the 4 murders that you've referred to?
There's no evidence directly.
And would you accept that the BNP, it being not a prescribed political party, were a legitimate political party and had a right to be able to campaign, as did the groups on the left?
No, I would not accept that, because the BNP were openly fascist. They said that. They said, we didn't say it, well, we did say it about them, but they said it about themselves. They said, we are a Nazi party and Hitler was right. Now, how can you have an awareness about social justice, be anti-racist, and just allow that to go on and to continue? They were clearly linked to C18, which had the slogan, a sort of, I can't remember it now off the top of my head, but a slogan that they used from Hitler, and they were active. I mean, I know who they were. Some of them. They went to school with me. They had skinheads, Dr. Martin boots. They stood on the street corners. So that was a reality.
Were you personally threatened? I
was threatened, yeah. The C18 were in a pub in Bexley Heath, and they were in the pub saying, does anybody know who that commie slag is, Lois Austin, and where does she live? And friends of mine were in the pub and said, you know, Lois is one of us, she's part of the community, and leave her alone. And I was also on the C18 hit list as well. So a young woman, teenage woman, and because I was campaigning against racism and fascism, I end up on a hit list for C18, and they're in a local pub asking for my address.
You mentioned the murder of Stephen Lawrence, and that happened on the 22nd of April 1993. That then triggered a call for a demonstration, did it, in Welling? And that first demonstration took place on the 8th of May 1993.
It did, but I have to stress here that we organised the lobbies of Bexley Council, but we also organised, after every racist murder and after every racist attack, we organised a demo or protest of some kind. So that demonstration on the 8th of May was
So coming up on screen, there should be the World in Action footage from 1993 entitled Violence with Violence. It was series 30, episode 8, and it was aired on the 15th of November 93. Can we just show...
There is
sorry,
terror
can we just
on
pause? Play from 1340 to 1357. So 1340, please, to 1357 first. So what we can see here is coming down this main route towards the junction from Winds Common up in the top right, left-hand corner, and we have the demonstration coming down to the front, and you can see the line of police officers there backed up with mounted officers. Had you paused at that stage, had the demonstration, the march, come to a stop at this stage?
Yeah, so we paused, and all of the groups, we'd had a conversation beforehand. So I was involved in all of this. I was involved in the meetings before the demonstration at Scotland Yard, trying to negotiate with the police the route that we wanted. And we had sort of arguments with the police and saying it was our democratic right to march past the BNP headquarters. That's where people are expecting to march. That's the root of the problem. We want to march that route.
And as part of that negotiation, had you explained to the police that it was going to be very well attended and where people were coming from to attend?
Yes, we had. So, I mean, the idea that it was the undercovers that told the police it was going to be a big demonstration. No, we told the police it was going to be a big demonstration. We said we're going to have 50,000 people. This is the 4th racist murder in that area. People are angry. We are going to have a big demonstration. And it's as I said, it's our democratic right to march past the BNP headquarters. They didn't agree. We didn't get agreement before the demonstration, and then we know that I think it's at Section 12 order for the route of the march. So what we'd agreed, the organisers, was that we would get to that point, and then we would attempt to negotiate with the police again the route that we wanted. And I was, along with Julie Watson, we were engaged with the police trying to negotiate that we wanted to go along Upper Wickham Lane. And that went on for quite a while. Meanwhile, the protest is coming down the hill. But it was obvious to me at that point that Oakhampton Crescent was blocked, as was Lodge Hill. And I remember saying to the police, well, if you want us to go up Lodge Hill, why have you got lines of riot police blocking Lodge Hill with police horses? Why are you doing that? We can talk to you about getting our stewards to get the demonstration up Lodge Hill, but why have you blocked it? And they refused to answer me.
So if we play the footage now, up until 1357...
Demonstration had reached the police roadblock. But who were some of the groups on the march? By far the largest were Youth Against Racism in Europe, YRE. Militant who had been expelled from the Labour Party had set up YRE to recruit young people from the anti-racist movement.
Being a member of Militant Labour.
If we stop there. So 1436, just to 1446.
Don't officially advocate violence. World in Action has discovered a hidden group of 25 within the organisation called the Away Team, used for defence and direct confrontation.
If we stop there. And then 1735 to 1836.
The demonstrators on the October 16th march were moving on police lines, blocking the way to the fascist bookshop. Negotiations to allow a small token group through had failed. The organisers wanted all or nothing.
The march didn't stop. The march was stopped by the organisers, who then demanded of police that the march be allowed to go past the BNP bookshop. I mean, I posed the question, why? They'd been served with a notice nearly a week before that they would not be allowed to go down past the BNP bookshop.
As the demonstrators pushed forward, they found all exits, including the alternative route ordered by the police, blocked.
So that's Lodge Lane.
Lodge Hill.
Lodge Hill.
Frustrated and hemmed-in demonstrators began pushing and shoving. Placards were thrown. The riot police were moved in. Racism had been forgotten. It was now a fight with the police, who blocked the way to the bookshop.
Thank you. So that's the footage where we can see you'd stopped, tried to negotiate again to go up with Upper Wickham Lane past the BNP bookshop. Police had refused, and then you came to the junction where all exit routes were blocked off. Is that your evidence?
Yes.
Why was it important for you to march past the BNP headquarters?
Because we believed that that was our democratic right, that that the British National Party headquarters was the source of the problem, that many of those on the demonstration, I mean, the commentary is just rubbish and ridiculous, but the commentator says the biggest group on the march was the YRE. Actually, the biggest group on the march was local people. People from Welling, people from Bexley, people from Greenwich. I knew because I knew them and I recognised them, and I organised them to come on the march, and I met them all on Winds Common and said, right, it's really important that you lot are up the front because you are local, this is your area. So we believed that we had the right to march that route, and we thought that the police were denying us our democratic right, and that it was important to march where the BNP were active because we were the community. And we were showing to the community that we were the majority, that the BNP were not the majority, that particularly if you was a black or Asian family living in Welling at that time, you did not need to be fearful because we were the majority and we were organised, and we wanted to create an environment where people felt safe and that the British National Party and their activity was isolated.
Had you heard of any rumour about the BNP bookshop being burnt down?
No. And that, quite frankly, is ridiculous because the method of the YRE and the Anti-Nazi League as well, actually, but they've spoken for themselves, but the method of the YRE was to build a mass political campaign. That is how you defeat fascism. If I'd heard of any plan like that, I would have said, don't be ridiculous. Number one, it's heavily fortified. I don't know if you've seen it. But also, there was a residential house next door to it, and we had knocked on that house before every protest. We knocked on that house and said, you know, we're having a protest. We just want to let you know the target is the BNP headquarters. We door knocked Upper Wickham Lane and put a leaflet through every door. Why would we, it was our community, why would we want a big violent act and a building burnt down in our community? It's just nonsense. It's rubbish. It did not happen. And it was not the method of the YRE.
Can we have up on screen, please, UCPI 25694. This is the SDS intelligence report on Welling. It's a compilation of intelligence reports, and it's dated the 18th of September 93. On page 1, we can see that up until the evening, people were confident that they were going to be able to reach the bookshop and, if practicable, destroying it. Do you see that?
Yeah.
You say that's not accurate. That wasn't the intention.
That's not accurate. And in fact, the night before the demonstration, we had a huge, big stewards meeting in Woolwich that was hosted by Greenwich Action Committee Against Racist Attacks, Greenwich CRE, Indian Workers Association, and then we were there, ANL and Youth Against Racism in Europe. And we had a big meeting, it must have been 200 people, where we talked about the protest what we were going to do on the day, tactics on the day, which was march, try to negotiate with the police, and we talked about stewards, and we got that organised. We'd already asked the local trade unions to provide stewards and stuff like that. So that's what we were doing on the eve of the demonstration. We had a huge steward meeting, and we were planning for what we were going to do the following day.
We can see paragraph 2 on here, that there were 7,000 police officers when you arrived that day, and that convinced leaders on the morning of the march that it would be impossible to reach the bookshop. And from the moment they reached that conclusion, their efforts became less than wholehearted. What do you say about that?
Well, there were reports in the press in the weeks running up to the 16th of October that all police leave was cancelled, that there was going to be a massive police presence, and so we knew, and everybody knew, that the idea that you could attempt to march up Upper Wickham Lane to the BNP headquarters without police permission, that was just not going to happen. But nevertheless, it was really important to continue to press that point, to continue to negotiate that point.
And in fact, paragraph 3 says that the physical presence and appearance of large numbers of fully equipped riot police was the single most persuasive deterrent to the ill-intentioned mob on that day. And the second major factor was the choice of battleground by the police. So what do you say about the mob being ill-intentioned, and what do you say about the choice of battleground by the police?
Well, I just don't think it's true. I don't think that there was an ill-intentioned mob on the day. I think the police... I'll come to this point about the police, the choice of the battleground by the police in a second. But I don't think it was an ill-intentioned mob. I think it was... And this is all part of a campaign around these events to criminalise protests, to criminalise people that go on demonstrations, and to frighten people from coming on demonstrations, which I think is completely and utterly unacceptable in what is supposed to be a democratic society. You should be able to feel that you can go on a demonstration and that you will be safe, and that you won't be told that you're some violent person. As I said, we were on the side of the angels. That demonstration was right, and it was a good thing to do because of the terrible, terrible racist violence in the area. Now, on the second line where it says the major factor was the choice of battleground by the police, well, we never had any intention of trying to get through police lines, because that would have been impossible and ridiculous, and we would never have suggested that. But I do think the police chose that battleground. I think that was a trap. I think, and I asked the question, I made the point that the inquiry needs to look at why Lodge Hill was blocked. Why was it blocked? You can see clearly on the video that there are lines of riot police, and then there are horses behind them. What was all that about? Why did they do that? To this day, I don't understand. Why did they block Lodge Hill? It can only be, and this is my view now, I've come to after all of these years, that it was a police trap, that we came down the hill, we had absolutely nowhere to go, and every exit route was blocked. And as I said, I know the geography, I know those roads, I know them very, very well. And I said to the police, if you don't want us to go up Lodge Hill, we can go up Oakhampton Crescent. It's actually quite a wide, I think it's a B road. We'll go up Oakhampton Crescent, and there is a park at the top of there where we can have a closing rally and disperse and go home. They wouldn't open up Oakhampton Crescent. And I think it was a police trap, and the police attacked us. This idea, and the World in Action programme repeats it, this idea that we all then began attacking the police is just not true. The police attacked the demonstration, and you can see actually as we march to the police blockage, you can see we're just walking. You can see 2 or 3 lines of plainclothes police amongst us, just walking along. In fact, I think we were talking to them. So the idea If it was true that we were some violent mob that wanted to attack the police, why didn't we attack them then when they were just walking amongst us in plain clothes? It's absolute rubbish. And that report, that World in Action report, when it was played yesterday, some of us sitting up there giggled. We laughed because we thought, how the hell do they manage to put that stuff out? It's absolute rubbish. But I do think it was a police trap. I think that they attacked us. They wanted to discredit the protesters. And as I said, why did they not open Lodge Hill? And in fact, they allowed those, continual charges at protesters, first of all with riot police and then with police on horseback. They allowed that to go on. And while I was negotiating, it might have been with this Olsen guy, saying, open up Lodge Hill. This is dangerous. Open up Lodge Hill because someone's going to get killed. And I was negotiating with him. I had stewards around me. Something that wasn't in my witness statement that actually I'd sort of forgotten about that I should have put in was that I was charged on 2 occasions by riot police. I was trying to talk to the police. I was charged. I was on the floor. And if it weren't for the YRE stewards, and I know the YRE stewards teams come up a lot in this inquiry, if it wasn't for the YRE stewards, people like Dan Gilman and others who jumped on my back when the police were trying to batter me and they took the blows on their backs, if it hadn't have been for that, I honestly believe that I would have ended up like Julie Watson, who was whacked across the head with a police truncheon, and I could see her on my left. I'm negotiating with the police keep charging us, and I could see Julie Watson and her white jacket covered in blood. And I was saying to our stewards, they've got Julie, you've got to go over there, you've got to assist. That was what was going on. That was the reality of Welling. And I'm so glad that I've got the opportunity here at this inquiry to put the record straight. Can I just say a couple of more things? Just after that, there was the very next day actually, on the Sunday, my mum and dad lived in Welling, just off the high street. And I was staying at my parents' house, and my dad said, let's go and have a look and see what's going on. And we had a drive around, and we bumped into the ITN news team reporting and going on about these violent protesters. And my dad said to them, why don't you report the truth? Why don't you report that the police have blocked Lodge Hill and they continually charged in an enclosed space all of these protesters with nowhere to go? You couldn't go back because there was 50,000 people behind us. Why don't you tell the truth? And then my dad said to them, and you can see it in that World in Action programme, and I'm going to say it just in case I don't get asked about it. In that World in Action programme, at the end of it, I think it's that footage, you can see riot police chasing people across a field. Now that field, again, as I said, I know the geography very well, that's Clam Field. And that's at the top to the left of Lodge Hill. Now that was where the police had said we were going to disperse. That was their route. We were going to go up Lodge Hill and we were going to have a closing rally on Clamfield, and then we were going to go home from there. So at the point which we finally get them to open up Lodge Hill, we get the demonstration moving up Lodge Hill. The police still charge protesters as they're leaving and going up Lodge Hill. They then ram police horses into them, and our stewards are getting kicked by police horses as they're trying to keep the protest together and get them to go up Lodge Hill. The protesters then get onto Clamfield, and the riot police chase them across Clamfield. That's what you can see on that footage. Why are riot police with batons and shields charging protesters and hitting protesters and beating them up while they are leaving the area? It's utterly disgraceful. And I wanted to say that about Clamfield, just in case I don't get a question about it.
Thank you. Moving on to page 2 of this document.
Yeah.
Paragraph 1. We can see here that there's reference to Julie Watson, who spoke about just a moment ago, and she was for the SWP about halfway down the paragraph, and she was urging a sit-down protest in front of police lines, using families of murdered coloured youths and a Holocaust survivor as stooges. Is there a racist inference there in this reporting about the fact that families of young people who had been murdered were being used for a purpose, a political purpose?
Yeah, and I think that I think it's the fact that the police report it in that way shows their racism actually and their prejudice, that black families, black members of the community have to be led or can be in some way manipulated by activists, socialists, trade unionists. It's absolute rubbish. You know, there were, as I said, that we know that there were different sort of tactics in the campaign. We know, for example, that Anti-Racist Alliance didn't want to march in Welling. They wanted to march.
I'm going to move on here because we've got quite a lot to get through.
A lot to get through. Yeah.
Paragraph 3 of this document, stewards were instructed not to carry weapons. So is that right? Were stewards instructed not to carry weapons?
I can't remember that specifically saying that, but that just wasn't something that we did. Is that in a police report? I mean, we didn't have to say to our stewards, don't carry weapons, because we didn't carry weapons. We were about, you know, and I hope I'm going to get some more questions about our stewarding team, because you know, the idea that we were violent, that we were carrying weapons, that we were up for a fight and all of that, it's just not true. We were...
Moving on then to paragraph, at page 3 of this document. So still, this is the Welling report. Paragraph 1 does say the actual fighting was sustained by a group of 60 to 100 crusties who the stewards were powerless to control, and it was clear that many of the stewards, fearing for their safety, were eager to calm things down. So what do you say about that? Were there a group of crusties that you were aware of?
Well, what this police officer, what does he mean by it? I mean, it's insulting to call people crusties, but there were some people at the front that were getting charged and battered by police batons. Don't forget, we had lots of protesters and stewards with head injuries on that day that were pushing and shoving back. I mean, there were. I mean, when you get pushed and shoved by someone with a big right shield into a crowd of 50,000 people behind you, you push and shove back. I mean,
so
that did happen.
What did start it? Do you accept there that the actual fighting was started by a group of people that the stewards didn't have much control over, or was there something else that provoked? No,
I do not accept that. The violence was started by the police. The police charged the demonstration. We were negotiating. They moved the line of police that were in sort of normal police clothes. They moved them out the way and they brought in the riot police while I was talking to the police and trying to negotiate something. Okay. And they moved them in, and then they started to push the front of the demonstration backwards into everybody else. And people were forced, you see footage of people going into gardens or up onto the cemetery wall on the right. That was because there was a crush and people were having to jump up and get out of the way.
Paragraph 2 of this document says that the largest group was the NUT, the National Union of Teachers. Was that right?
I don't think that probably is right. How do they know if someone is a teacher or not? I think that's a bit of a silly thing to say. I think that they're probably... I know that
Sorry, if I clarify that.
Yeah.
There were unions present, and of the unions, the largest union group was from the National Union of Teachers.
Oh, well, that might be true, because we did lots and lots and lots of work, anti-racist work with the National Union of Teachers, with Unison. I spoke probably at lots of National Union of Teachers meetings. We had a schools pack, which I went and did talks in sixth form college, FE colleges, schools about our schools pack and stuff. So that is... it may be true that the NUT was the biggest trade union grouping.
Paragraph 3 talks about police tactics. Police tactics on mounted and baton charges instilled fear in all but the most enraged demonstrators. You did talk about the fear caused by the police actions. And the topography of the scene, which resulted in the march being pinched, so as to allow only a few hundred protesters into the fighting area. The police holding the high ground meant that most of those who would have joined the fray were unable to do so. Does that ring true as you remember it, that because the protest group was pinched, only a few people were able to go into the main area where the fighting was happening?
I think the first sentence is right, that the police tactics of mounted and baton charge instilled fear in everybody. Well, it says in all, but the most enraged. I think it certainly instilled fear in me. I was very frightened and scared. But I don't think that's right about the march being pinched. I think that the riot police were coming from the front and they were pushing everybody back. If later a line of police came in further up and what we know that they do on demonstrations, which is, you know, section off. That's what they did on May the 8th. They split the demonstration. Whether that happened on October the 16th, I can't remember. I think in Lewis's evidence yesterday, he said that is what happened and what happened to him, but I can't remember that. I just remember this onslaught in the front and pushing people backwards.
Ultimately, we know that Lodge Hill was opened up and the protesters were able to continue up towards the finish point. What ultimately happened in relation to the BNP headquarters?
Okay, so just on
Very
that,
briefly. If
okay,
you can,
sorry, I know, yeah, but on that
Sorry.
point about Lodge Hill being opened up, it wasn't opened up just because the police thought, all right, we've had enough, let's open up Lodge Hill. They opened up Lodge Hill because we forced them to. We negotiated it. There was a long time before they did that where they were refusing to open up Lodge Hill. And I was saying, why the hell are you not opening up Lodge Hill? This is dangerous. Someone's going to get killed. So that's the first point. And as I said, as we were leaving, we were being attacked by riot police and police on horseback. What ultimately happened was that our campaign was successful. The political campaign that we had in the area, the mass pressure from everything that we did, along with other groups, meant that the authorities eventually did set up a planning inquiry to close down the BNP headquarters. Now, said we were demanding that for 6 years before they did it. We said, you can use planning laws to close down the BNP HQ. You can use the Race Relations Act, incitement to racial hatred and violence. Why are you not doing it? They set up a planning inquiry in 1994, and I wrote the evidence for Youth Against Racism in Europe, where I linked issues around planning and detriment to the community to the Race Relations Act and incitement to racial hatred. And I said Race Relations Act is relevant for planning law, and that is a reason to close it. And the judge included our submission and that point in his reasoning as to why the BNP headquarters should be closed down. So our mass political campaign won, but you see more than that, and it's really important that I say this, because I've painted a picture, I gave the context of what happened, the BNP activity, the violence, the racist attacks. It was literally quite awful and terrifying, particularly for Black and Asian members of our community. As well as getting the BNP headquarters closed down, we actually stopped their activity. We stopped them going into youth clubs, recruiting young people, going into schools, standing outside with leaflets and stuff. We actually forced back their activity because of a political campaign for many years. Obviously, it's very frightening now because we've got the likes of Tommy Robinson and people like that coming to the fore. So we've probably got to do the same again. But at that time, we stopped the BNP activity in that area. So it was a successful campaign.
In terms of militancy, so leaving Welling now, I want to ask you just more generally about the political group, the YRE, that was a part of militant Labour as it was before it became militant, and then by 96 I think it was known as the Socialist Party. What does the term militancy mean in the context of YRE activity? For instance, was it a part of the identity of the type of activity that you undertook?
Well, as I said, YRE became a very broad youth organisation with militant members involved, but not actually the majority in terms of, I remember Hannah and I sitting on our desk with about 20,000 cards, membership cards of young people, little red cards of people that had signed up to join. So it became very big and very broad. But when we use the term militant or militancy in a labour movement context, and this is really important because I know it came up yesterday, and also it came up about fight for your rights, or a placard that said, we will fight, or something like that. When we use the word militant or militancy in labour movement context, I mean, that is language of the labour movement. And if somebody's raising it to suggest that it means violence or something, they don't really understand the labour movement. So I would describe myself as a working class militant. I work for a campaigning trade union, and, when an employer says we're going to make job cuts, or we're going to just rip up your terms and conditions, or we're going to outsource you to a rotten private company, then we take militant action. We build the union. We organise for ballots for industrial action. We set up strikes and picket lines. So that's what it means in the context of the labour movement, and it's a term that's always been there. It's always been used. I think there was
Does it mean confrontation? Does it mean violence?
No, it doesn't. It means. And this is the point about the method of the militant, the Socialist Party, and also the ideology and the method that we tried to bring into the YRE, which was that you win these campaigns through mass political action and activity. That's how you do it.
Have you personally been violent on demonstrations?
No, which is why I'm very upset that there is a special branch file on me, that I was spied on by undercover police officers for many years. I think Peter Francis said to the Guardian reporter, Paul Lewis, when he first got in touch with me and said, do you know Peter Francis has blown the whistle? He said this about you. Apparently Peter Francis said there was a MI5 file on Lois, but not a special branch file on Lois. Now there is a special branch file on me, a very big one. So my question to the inquiry, and I want it investigated, is that I have never been arrested for violence. I have never been brought before a court. I think I was cautioned once because I was on a sit-down protest with students over the abolition of free education when they introduced tuition fees in Islington, and we sat down and an officer came up, and I think he said to me, if you don't get up, Lois, we'll have to caution you. So we got up because I didn't want to be cautioned. So I have never been arrested and brought before a court, and I do not have a criminal record, and I have never been violent. So why do the Metropolitan Police and the Secret Services have a huge file on me? It is completely and utterly wrong. It is disgraceful, and it's something that should never ever happen in a so-called or supposedly democratic society. And I think what goes to the heart of all of this, and again it needs to be said at this inquiry, is that this is political policing. This is the police, the Secret Services and the British state saying anybody that criticises the state and what it's doing is a legitimate target, and that is completely and utterly wrong. And as I said, it's political policing, and the fact that these police officers colluded with private public organisation that's supposed to be held to account by MPs, the fact they spied on MPs is utterly disgraceful. And who gave the authorisation for that? The Home Secretary, the Prime Minister.
Can I just keep you
to... You can, but the very last point I would say about this is that, as I said, this is political policing, and who gave the authorisation and who knew about it.
And that's something that we will be investigating in the broader evidence of the inquiry. But in terms of YRE itself, the logo at the time, was that a fist smashing a swastika? And does that indicate that there was violence involved in it? I understand that the current logo is a swastika being put into a bin. So does that indicate that there has been a change of emphasis on the workings of the YRE?
No, not at all. And I actually think we used, I think we used lots of graphics, the swastika in the bin, fist going through the swastika. We used the red wedge symbolism, which was used by the people like Ben Elton and Lenny Henry and that when they set up the Red Wedge organisation in the 1980s. So we use lots of stuff, but no, and it's symbolic. The fist going through the swastika. I think every anti-racist, every anti-fascist organisation uses that, and it's symbolic. It's
Okay, can we have
about,
up on
as
the
I said,
screen then?
our method was about mass political activity.
There's a document, UCPI 33071, which is behind tab B1. It's a document, an event pro forma from the 9th of November 1993. And this is about a YRE weekend conference, and the organiser is named as you, Lois Austin, entitled Smash the Nazis. Were slogans chanted from the YRE megaphone at events to the effect of smash the BNP, the only Nazi is a dead Nazi, and bash the fash?
Yeah, I remember that event at South Bank University. We would have used slogans like smash the BNP. But again, you know, it's sort of to think that that means that you're going to go out and have violent street confrontations is a complete and utter misunderstanding of our methods, which were about, as I said, isolating the BNP, political education, building mass protests in the community. I mean, if we was to, there's no evidence at all that we ever attacked groups of Nazis. There is no evidence of that anywhere.
Peter Francis says in his witness statement, if I can just take you to...
Can I just finish that point, actually? The point I was going to make is that if we had engaged in that sort of activity, it would have been completely and utterly counterproductive. Imagine if all people in the Welling area saw, or Eltham, was groups of us, well, not me, because I would never be up for anything like that, but groups of anti-fascists, or YRE members, having fights with skinheads. That would have been completely counterproductive. Who would have, in the community, thought, that's a good idea, and I'm going to join that lot? That was not our method. I've explained what our method was in detail, and I can do it again, but it was not our method. And our method actually was ultimately successful because we closed the BNP, we pushed them back for a whole period, they couldn't organise in the area.
So is it your evidence then that you reject what Peter Francis says at paragraph 378 of his witness statement? I don't need to bring it up, but that the YRE slogan was no platform for fascists, and one of the core objectives was to hit the fascists wherever possible. And he does say that he observed frequent mentions from within the YRE that this is not a debating society, suggesting that, you know, action and particularly confrontation and conflict with the BNP was one of your objectives.
Yeah, so Peter Francis gives no evidence at all. There's nothing in there of any actual violent attacks by YRE members or members of our stewards or whatever. So there's no evidence to support that. But again, it's a misunderstanding of language which is commonly used in the Labour movement and around it, progressive campaigns, because it's commonly used, the phrase, no platform for fascists, which means that, so for example, when Bexley Council said to us, well, just ignore them, they'll go away, let them do what they want to do, but if you keep making a fuss about it and bringing attention to it, you're making it worse. Our attitude was, no, we can't let them just hold their public meetings. We can't let them stand on Welling Corner giving out leaflets or going to the youth centre and talk to people, because there's big dangers in that if that's allowed to happen. We can't let them grow because of what it leads to. So we would say that their headquarters needs to be closed. They shouldn't be given council premises for public meetings. If they do hold a public meeting, I don't know, booked Welling Library for a public meeting or something like that, then we would organise the community and the trade unions to go to the library and stand outside and say, we can't let them in. We can't let them hold their meeting. That's not the same as having a street fight. That's saying no platform means that we need to use a political campaign, we need to use the community, the mass, as many people as we can, to ensure that they are no platformed. That's what we mean by that.
I'd like to ask you specific questions about the away team. During the footage, we heard reference to a small group of about 25 within the YRE known as the away team. Is that a group that you recognise?
Well, I think it's sort of become, what's the word? A bit of a, because at the time nobody was really referring to YRE stewards as the aways team. It's become a bit of a sort of, can't think of the term, can't think of the term, but it's become that. And nobody...
But it was certainly a phrase that was used in 1993 at the time of Welling, wasn't it? Because it was in the World in Action footage.
Yeah,
so it's not something that has been
But it was
created
never
since.
formalised. There was never, let's set up an away team and let's have a meeting and set, who's a member of it. Nothing like that ever happened. It was sort of... just because a World in Action journalist has repeated it because he's heard it from someone doesn't mean that it's true. I think they were referred to as the away team. It was a bit of a joke at first. It's now become a bit of a legend. But essentially, they were YRE stewards, which played a really, really important and crucial role. And I think that if they hadn't have been there at Welling 2 and on other protests, then there would have been injuries. So if I can just give you a bit of background. So, for example, I'm not sure if it comes up in the documents of inquiry. I think it does somewhere. But early on, when we was campaigning against the BNP headquarters, we were violently attacked. So there was a public meeting in Welling Library called by the Bexley and Greenwich Labour Movement Campaign Against Racism and Fascism. I wasn't at that meeting. I don't know where I was. My dad was at it and some other trade union people and local people. And my dad was on the door collecting the names of people coming in and giving out literature and stuff. And the BNP and C18 rushed that meeting. I think it must have been about 91, 92. They rushed into that, they ran into that meeting, they smashed it up, and they beat everybody up inside. Now, there were women in that meeting. A couple of them I know, they were youth workers from the Lovell Youth Centre, which was a few doors down from the BNP headquarters. They violently attacked that meeting. When we had another demonstration in and around the Woolwich area, there was a sort of trade union lefty pub in General Gordon Square in the middle of Woolwich, and some of our, I think it must have been militant people, trade union people, were in the pub after the demonstration, and C18 and BNP went into the pub and beat them up. A good friend of mine was put in hospital. He was a radiologist at Guy's Hospital. So that's the background. So just let me finish this point. And then we were attacked on May the 8th by riot police with shields and batons, and we had lots of head injuries. So that really taught us that we needed stewards. We needed people who were looking out for dangers, and we needed people that could help keep everybody safe, particularly when we were trying to get young people, young women involved. I remember a group of women from, a group of women from the Glindon estate in Plumstead, who were women that had been...
Miss Austin, if we don't move on, we're not going to get through your evidence.
But we've got these women and their children involved.
We're going to go for a break in about 10 minutes.
We can't invite them to come to our events and not steward them. So...
In terms of the stewards, though, was there a group of about 25 people who stewarded on different events that were more inclined to be engaged in preemptive strikes? So they would go and attack BNP people as opposed to purely defensive?
No. There was a group of stewards that would surround our demonstrations, and it was interchangeable, by the way. It wasn't the same group all the time. There were some key figures that had learned how to be a good steward, and they'd done it for their trade union branch, and then they were doing it for us. And it was about protecting our demonstrations, defending our demonstrations, and it wasn't about preemptive stuff. It was about making sure everybody was safe on our protest.
You say at paragraph 9.4 of your witness statement that you were successful in challenging and pushing back fascist organisations. Do you mean physically going to those organisations and pushing back on those members.
No, I don't. And actually, I think the paragraph that's connected to, that's the last sentence in the paragraph that talks about.
We can go to it, in fact.
Yeah, it talks, I think it talks about
9.4.
the planning inquiry, the fact that we won that, the fact that we'd stopped BNP activity in that area for a whole number of years. So when I say we push them back or we force them back, it's really in the political sense that we stop their activity. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I say Peter Francis' claims are false.
Can we have up on the display Peter Francis' witness statement? It's at UCPI 36012, page 90, paragraph 543. And this is in relation to something called dawn raids. And he suggests that members of the target group, in coordination with AFA, conducted dawn raids on the BNP. And was that something you had any knowledge of?
I had no knowledge of that, and I do not believe that it happened, because it would be completely and utterly counterproductive, and it was not the method of YRE.
He says about halfway through the paragraph, the role I played in the dawn raids was to take activists around in my van, checking up on the addresses listed in the electoral roll to determine whether or not they were genuine. And I remember going on these drives in my van with several activists, including Paul Heron, who was very active in the Beckton area, where the BNP were campaigning a lot. I did not ever go on any dawn raids myself. And he said, at the beginning of that paragraph, that it involved putting things up on swastikas on doors and posting dog excrement through letterboxes. Is that something that you had any sense of at all?
Not at all. And we would never have done that. I mean,
what about Paul Heron? Was he part of the away team?
As I said, that's not our method, it's not our approach. And Paul Heron, no. Paul Heron was not regularly a steward. I think he may have stewarded on one or two occasions. Paul Heron was not a steward, and he was not sort of considered as part of the sort of main core group of our stewards. In fact, and I hope Paul doesn't mind me saying this, Paul and I were leafleting Plumstead Manor Girls' School, which is just by Plumstead Common, for one of the demonstrations. And it was just me and him, and we were giving out leaflets encouraging people to come and protest. And a skinhead turned up, a fascist turned up, and started threatening us and having a go at us. And we both ran away and got in the van and drove off, because it was very frightening. The idea that Paul Heron is some kind of, and I think in my bundle I've got a report from Peter Francis, I've got all these sort of reports with one line saying this person's violent, this person's violent, this person's violent. Utter nonsense. And it's fanciful. And the idea that Paul Heron was violent is just not true at all.
Thank you. That can be taken down. In your witness statement, and we don't need to go to it, it's at paragraph 16.2, just for the record, but you talk about Peter Francis, and you say that I know Peter Francis was at times involved in trying to shape some of the YRE activities. I received some reports suggesting he had occasionally encouraged stewards not to act solely in a defensive capacity. This raises serious questions for me about whether he may at times have been attempting to act as an agent provocateur, deliberately trying to provoke confrontations. And it may be that as part of his angry persona, he was just trying to keep that personality. Now, when you say you received some reports, what do you mean by that? What knowledge did you have? And did you ever see that for yourself?
No, I didn't see it for myself. I was not in... Peter Francis was in the Hackney YRE and the Hackney militant branch, and I was living mainly in South East London, but a few different places. I was not in Hackney, and so I didn't come across him an awful lot directly. London events, big events, demonstrations, protests, then I would see him and he would be there. But it was reported to me that he had said on occasion, why aren't we doing more to confront them? And our members had said to him, well, that's not our method. We're a political organisation. That's not our approach, and no, we won't be doing anything like that. So I am concerned as to whether or not he did play a role as an agent provocateur. That may be too strong a word to use.
We heard yesterday from Lewis that he recalls having a meeting with you and Hannah Sell once the inquiry became known about. And he, and I'm paraphrasing, he said that you reported to him that when Peter Francis moved from KAFG to YRE, he suggested to you 3 things about Lewis. And that was that Lewis ran away at Welling, Lewis encouraged him to throw things at others, and Lewis was an agent provocateur or an agent of police. What do you recall about that? Is that something that you told Lewis?
No, so I was here yesterday when Lewis gave evidence, and I don't remember that. And I think that I was not at. I think I was asked to go to a meeting, or there was a meeting that Socialist Party was having with Lewis to do with other issues, but I was not at that meeting. When he said that, I thought, I don't recall that. I sort of recall a meeting being set up with Lewis to talk about some other stuff that had come up, but I was at work and couldn't attend. So I don't think, I'm sure I was not at that meeting. I wasn't involved in those conversations. I think it's misremembering.
Did Peter Francis actually say that to you? Do you recall Peter Francis saying those things about Lewis to you?
No, I don't recall that. I mean, Hannah and I did do everything together for years. So he probably thinks if Hannah was there, I was there. But actually, I was not at that meeting. And I don't recall Peter Francis saying those things to me. He may have said it to people in Hackney. We would have to ask them about that, but I don't recall that.
Very quickly before we break at mid-morning, if just in terms of Peter Francis' involvement in violence, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions about that. If we can display on the screen, please. It's UCPI 36012, page 89. This is paragraph 537 and 538 of Peter Francis' witness statement. He says, as part of my deep cover involved convincing my target that I was interested in the confrontational side against the BNP. And at 538, we as a group certainly instigated violence with the BNP. I, as part of that group, attacked people. That was the role. The role was agreed with management, and that I think he's referring to is SDS management. However, as I have stated, I was very careful never myself to be the instigator within my group. I would not lead the charge. If the BNP were around, YRE went after them. And that is exactly what I did, because that was my role. So a couple of questions. Firstly, were you aware of Peter Francis being involved in preemptive attacks on the BNP?
No, not at all. I don't think there's any truth in this at all. I'm not aware of that at all. We were not involved in preemptive attacks. We were involved in lobbies, protests, mass demonstrations, counter-protests. If the BNP were having a protest, we would have a counter-protest. But we were not involved in preemptive attacks. And I don't remember, I certainly, I don't think it's true. I think he's making it up. And I think he's making it up to justify his role as an undercover police officer.
We heard evidence from Lewis yesterday, and we're going to go on after the break to look at the Brick Lane incident. But he, and again I'm paraphrasing, but he said militant were more inclined to parliamentary socialism rather than revolutionary socialism, and they had been embedded in the Labour Party and did become more involved in youth work and anti-fascism, but generally his sense was that they were generally well disciplined. But the away team, was that something a little bit separate, not part of the general stewarding, but more a bit of a law unto themselves, a bit more of a secret group?
No, not at all. If you're talking about our stewards, militant, and actually we get laughed at about this on the rest of the left, is a very disciplined organisation. We've got a lot of political cohesion. We're now a Socialist Party. We have a branch structure that people are expected to attend their branch each week. And our stewards would not have been involved in doing anything that the leadership of the YRE or the leadership of the YRE or the leadership of militant then Socialist Party did not know about. And he's right when he says that we were disciplined. We were. And first and foremost, as I've said, and I know I'm repeating myself, first and foremost, all of this was about a political campaign for us in communities and in trade unions. And our stewards were there to ensure that we could do all of that safely, that we would not be attacked. We had been attacked before we got on top of the stewarding and got it organised properly. We had been attacked. Our members had been put in hospital by fascists and also by riot police. So we organised very well-disciplined stewarding because of all of that, and they did not go rogue because we were a disciplined organisation.
Thank you, sir. That may be a time to break for lunch.
Certainly.
For a break.
Yes. We now break for 15 minutes
Okay.
so that the transcribers can have a break and you can too.
All right, thank you.
All rise.
Miss Austin, thank you. Just one point to clarify from your evidence before the break. You mentioned that the away team was never formalised, and I just want to take you to a document. It's MPS 0745874. Page 2 shows that this was a militant conference in 1994. And on page 3 of that document, the bottom paragraph is in relation to internal page 3, so it's the next page along. Digital page 4. Resolution 5 towards the bottom of that paragraph. Can you see that the highlighted part says that Resolution 5 confirmed the official formation of the away team stewarding group, and that the second paragraph on this highlighted section was that the resolution was passed unanimously, and Privacy has provisionally already called the first official stewards group meeting for Tuesday the 8th of November. So in that sense, was it right that the away team was an official formation as part of the stewarding group in Militant?
No, I'm absolutely sure that it wasn't. I think we may have set up an official stewarding group at some point. I can't remember. But where's the motion? This is his, or is it Peter Francis's report?
Oh no, this is well, yes, it's an event performer. So it's an SDS report that is based on his intelligence, and so he would have fed into this.
Yeah, so it's his interpretation of what happens at that meeting, but it doesn't. The motion 5 or resolution 5 isn't there, is it? So, so we don't know if this is true. It may have been. I think I was at that conference in Killick Street. If it was I think it was the London Region Militant Labour Conference. It may have been that we discussed stewarding and passed a motion that said something like, we need to ensure that... Sorry, what year did you say this was?
This is it's the weekend of the 15th, 16th of October 1994.
So we might have had a motion that says something like, we need to make sure all events are well stewarded. If we're organising protests and demonstrations where we think the BNP or the far right may be in the area, we need to keep people safe. Therefore, every branch needs to be aware. They need to make sure they send a steward to the event. I would imagine the motion said something like that.
Okay. Thank you. The next topic I want to move on to is the Brick Lane incident on the 19th of September 93. So this is before Peter Francis is deployed into the area. Do you recall whether Peter Francis was there at Brick Lane?
I don't. And I have thought about that, and I have thought about that, and I cannot remember.
To put it in context, just before we go to the footage, the demo took place on the 19th of September 1993, and that was just 3 days after the election of the BNP councillor, and you mentioned him before, Derek Beacon. And what we can see on the footage is a man with a megaphone shouting, "I love dogs, BNP," repeatedly. And that was taking place in Brick Lane in East London, which we know is an ethnically diverse part of the city. And as you described in your witness statement, it's in the heart of a Bangladeshi community.
Yeah.
If we can have up on screen then the World in Action programme again, and it's from the time 1446 to 1541. And it may be that you notice yourself in this footage as well.
Yeah.
In September, the BNP was celebrating their by-election victory at the Isle of Dogs. Separated by the police, the YRE's away team under an ANL banner were protesting on the other side of the street. Suddenly, YRE supporters, some dressed as skinheads, making up the away team, crossed over to the BNP side, pretending to be racists.
I herded the anti-fascists into the pen where the fascists were, across the other side of the road. As it happened, the police mistook them for fascists. The police obviously have a preconceived idea what a fascist looks like. Short hair, baseball caps, things like that. And it's on film for all to see what happened after that. They got a roaster.
The away team claim they achieved their aim of attacking and driving the BNP off the streets.
Thank you. I'm going to stop it there. So we can take that down now, please. Did you see yourself in the footage?
Yes, yeah.
Were you stood there at the front on the other side of the road in a denim jacket?
Yeah, a denim jacket and long blonde hair, yeah.
And what we heard in terms of the coverage there was that the away team was stood over the other side of the road. Who was actually stood in that group with you? How would you describe that group that you were with?
So that report's inaccurate because it says that those people in the protest opposite the BNP paper sale rushed across the road and sort of ran at the BNP. That isn't what happened. We were behind a barrier and we were having a static protest. Incidentally, we had permission for that protest from the police. The police knew we were going to be there. The police were there. We said we're going to get this spot. The BNP had been turning up there for weeks. Terrible racist attacks. Qudus Ali had been attacked and was fighting for his life in hospital just a few months before that. And something's got to be done about it. So we were where you see me penned in, and then the BNP were opposite. They were taunting us. They were shouting abuse at us, all sorts of horrible Nazi stuff. And then a group of our stewards were in the area around the edge of on Bethnal Green Road on the corner of Brick Lane, because we had been told that C18 was in the area. So again, we'd learnt our lesson. There'd been terrible attacks. An A&L stall a few months previously had been turned over, and a member of ours had been, because we had a few Socialist Party people on that stall, militant people on that stall, and he got hospitalised because he was attacked by C18. So that was all the background to what was going on.
And how long did the demo last? We've obviously just seen a very short clip, but how long was this demonstration lasting for on this day?
I think we got there early, so we were there before the BNP turned up. So I think we were probably there from about 8 or 9 in the morning, and then we're there for about an hour. The BNP turn up. This is going on probably for about half an hour or so. I don't know.
And what triggered
minutes.
the rush? Who actually rushed in?
And then our stewards, as they came from on the right of me, if I'm here looking out from my right, our stewards are on the other side of the road, and they basically see an opportunity to get amongst the BNP, and they effectively, as you can see, the idea that it was some huge big violent confrontation is just not true. I mean, I live near the old West Ham football ground, and there was much worse stuff than that going on every weekend, and there is now at the Olympic Park.
But it was the YRE stewards, was it, that came from the right over to the BNP? Yeah. So would you accept then that is like a confrontational attack on the BNP people that were stood there by the stewards?
The way I would describe that is that, as I said, there had been terrible racist attacks, 4 racist attacks, young Asian men near death, fighting for their lives. I don't know if the inquiry has seen the photographs of Qudus Ali and the way he was beaten by a gang in a park just off Bethnal Green Road. And the C18 had intimidated that community, the Bengali community. They were active, and the BNP. There was a A&L petitioning event which some of our people also attended, and they were beaten up. And
so are you saying then that the stewards approaching the BNP on the other side of the road, it was justified, essentially?
I think it was I think it was lawful violence. I think it was about self-defence, about defending the community, and it was about, and it was basically they ran through them and they chased them away. That is what happened. And from the footage, that's what you can see.
And was that pre-planned then? Was that something that you had knowledge of?
I had no knowledge of it at all. I think Lois gave evidence yesterday of being surprised. You can see we're just standing there doing the normal sort of protest, and then I think that they came along. They were a group of white working class men, and I think the police thought, oh, we'll let them into this side with the BNP because they look like the BNP, which is really badly stereotyping white working class men, actually. And then they went in there and they chased them off.
Was Lewis part of that group?
From what I can remember, and again, I'm trying hard to remember what happened, I'm pretty sure that Lewis was with me. I mean, it'd be good to have a look and see if you can see the Kingsway banner, but I'm pretty sure that he was with us on the static protest behind. You can see we've got a metal police barrier in
So
front.
who then was in that away team, being very, very careful about names and looking at the cipher list if you need to?
I can't remember now exactly who it. If I saw the footage, maybe, but you can't really identify people from the footage, so I can't really remember.
Were you aware of somebody called Anthony or Bobby Lewis?
No.
Known as a DJ, Bobby McGee.
No.
Have you
No,
heard of?
I really
have you
not.
heard of HM78?
I know a song about Bobby McGee.
Have you heard of HM78? Are you familiar with who that is? Undercover officer.
Is that are we allowed? Are you allowed to give me their name? Is it?
Trevor Morris.
Yeah, I've read all the lot of the documents of the inquiry, and I can't remember Trevor Morris. I can't remember ever seeing him or coming across him.
Okay. Do you agree with what we heard on the footage there of the commentator saying that the away team claimed that they had achieved their aim of attacking and driving the BNP off the streets? Was that the aim of the day?
I don't agree with that. I think I would say, and we've said it, and we said it publicly, that the anti-racist movement and the Bengali community and the organisation known as Youth Connection, which was a big organisation of Bangladeshi youth that was set up in response to the BNP, or to the racist attacks in that area, we said that the community and anti-racist organisations cleared the BNP from that area, and they never came back. That's what we said.
We know that Peter Francis has said in his witness statement, I don't need to bring it up, but for the record, it's paragraph 431, that YRE had an appetite for violence. Do you accept that?
No, I don't accept that. The why. Let's be clear about this. I talked about Hannah and I having on our desk in our YRE office. We sat with two desks facing each other, and we literally had piles of these little red cards that young people were filling in, and they were predominantly teenagers, FE students, sixth form students, and all of our money to fund the YRE, of which we got a lot, was all from National Union of Teachers, Unison, rail workers unions. That's what the YRE was. The idea that's been portrayed by the media, and it's because they can't understand, or they can't see it as anything else other than this small violent group.
It's
just not true. It was a huge.
If I could just say, we've looked at Welling, we've looked at the BNP Brick Lane incident. And Peter Francis does say in his statement, and it's at paragraph 534, I don't need to display it, but he does say the worst violence I witnessed was the violence at Welling. I do not believe I saw violence at that level again on such a scale. I did see the same sort of fighting going on between the police and demonstrators at other events, but it was on a much smaller scale. So obviously, during this inquiry, we're looking at those incidents. But can you give us a sense of how regular they were, or how few and far between they were? You know, what was the level of public disorder that you recall from those years and which you were reported on?
Yeah, so the vast majority of what we did, there was no violence of any kind. So we had lobbies. I've explained this. We had how many? 27 lobbies of Bexley Council. Some of them were hairy because there were huge, great big skinheads waving bottles in my face when we were saying the BNP needs to be closed down. So the vast majority of stuff that we organised, there was no disorder apart from us being threatened. You know, I talked about Eltham, what happened there with the BNP on the corners, Derek Beacon given the Nazi salute and then chasing us through Eltham.
And how often would you have pre-event negotiations with the police? So you said you had a pre-event negotiation before Welling and a pre-event negotiation with the police before the Brick Lane incident.
Yeah.
Would you always have a negotiation with the police and let them know what your plans were?
Yeah, I can't think of a demonstration around that time for all of the big events where we didn't meet with the police, actually. I can't think of one of them. I mean, every lobby of Bexley Council, the police knew about it. Eltham, Kidbrooke, Welling, they knew about it. And as I said, it wasn't me that met with the police at Brick Lane. It might have been, you know, I think another one of our activists that has given a witness statement to the inquiry. But we did have permission for that. So I can't think of any other events, any significant big events. I mean, obviously we did lots of campaign stalls and stuff where you don't need to get police permission, but...
Can you think of an example where there was significant public disorder where you hadn't previously spoken to the police about it?
No, I can't.
When you had a demonstration or a protest in public, did you predict that there would be public disorder in relation to it? Could you have predicted that there might be some conflict between the left and the right wings?
Sorry, say the question again.
So when you're going out and planning to protest against a BNP paper sale, for instance, as we saw on Brick Lane, could you personally have predicted there might be a little bit of trouble here, given what we know about the two sides? You know, or do you think that public disorder would always come as a bit of a surprise, and there would need to be some intelligence provided to the police to let them know about what was going to happen?
Well, as I said, in the early days of the campaign to close the BNP headquarters down, we were attacked by the BNP in C18. That happened at Welling Library, it happened in Woolwich at General Gordon Square. And I'm not talking about what happened at Brick Lane, where people basically get chased and they trip over and fall. And I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people being hospitalised and battered and stitches in their head and people spending several days. That's what happened to our people. It happened to my friend, as I said, who was a radiologist in a big London hospital. So we learned very quickly that we needed to get some kind of very good stewarding set up, because we needed to campaign, we needed to protest, we wanted to get the BNP out of a predominantly Bengali area around Brick Lane, we wanted to get the BNP out of Welling because of the terrible things that they were doing. But if we were, and I think Lindsay Gilman made this point very well, but if we were asking people to come out and protest, young men and women, as I said, this big group of women from the Glindon estate in Plumstead, them and all of their kids were coming to our stuff. If we were going to do that, we had to ensure that people were safe. So we took stewarding extremely seriously. And that's why we had the stewards that we did. To say that they were a group of men that were out of control, doing their own thing, preemptive strikes, is absolute nonsense. That was never our method, and we would never have supported that. That's not what happened. And in fact, because we had those stewards, I actually think that they prevented some terrible injuries happening to people. For example, I talked about when the police rushed me at Welling 2 twice, and I was on the floor. And because of what happened on the 8th of May, Welling 1, we assigned, and you can see them in the film, 2 stewards to me, one either side, and they made sure that I didn't end up like Julie Waterson. I think we're going to talk about Earl's Court. At Earl's Court, we were going home and I didn't have, we can talk about what happened to my steward on that day, and I did get battered by the police. I wasn't protected on that day, so we took stewarding extremely seriously for all of those reasons.
Earl's Court happened on the 15th of January 1994, and that was in relation to, as we heard from Lewis yesterday, in relation to a protest against a Blood and Honour gig, and that was at Becontree. Is that right?
Becontree. Yeah.
Becontree. And you travelled there. Did you travel there by train?
So, I think I'm trying to remember. I think I probably got the tube to either Dagenham East or Dagenham or Becontree. I can't remember now. But to get there, yes.
And had you negotiated with police before that? Had you given them a heads up that you were going to protest against the gig?
That's a good question, and I can't remember. But I suspect that we did because there was a lot of people, and when we got there, there was a lot of police. So I suspect that it was prearranged with, that we'd said to the police, the BNP or C18 have got a gig going on in that pub, and we're going to have a counter protest.
As you're making your way to Becontree, the police, you see, travel by the side of you in a van, and they call out to you, don't they? What do you say about that?
Well, what I say about that is I think I'm absolutely convinced that I was targeted by the police on that day. And my question again for the inquiry, which needs investigating, is what role did undercover police officers play in, one, trying to create an image that I was a violent person that needed to be contained, which was just not true. So what role did they play in setting all of that up? And what did undercover police officers say to the uniformed police and the riot police on that day that meant that I was targeted? I have no doubt, because the incident that you described, we were walking, we got off the train, I think it was tube train, to one of those stations nearby to Becontree. We are walking along a main road, and the riot police were in vans coming alongside us and at our walking pace with the side door open, and one of the police officers inside was saying, "Oh, Louise, we know all about you. Oh, Louise." So I said, well, first of all, my name's not Louise, it's Lois, and so you got that wrong. And this is very worrying. What do you mean you know all about me? What are you playing at? So police officers acting in a really unprofessional way, deliberately targeting me, singling me out early on the day. Do you want me to go on and describe what happened?
Well, first off, I think there were about 400 to 500 protesters that day.
Yeah.
Is that right? And was it a protest just against the gig, or were you trying to prevent the gig from actually happening?
Well, it was a protest against the gig. We would have liked to have stopped it from happening, just from having sheer numbers and being outside. Our method was all be outside the door and don't let them in, so they can't have their gig. But actually, I think they cancelled it and didn't turn up because the counter process was big,
And so this is on a Saturday coming up to evening time. And at that time, what was your plan once it was cancelled? Where were you all going to go?
So this is about 1 or 2 o'clock, I think, 3 o'clock. We're in Becontree. We have a sort of rally. I was on the megaphone, other people on the megaphone making speeches. We are then surrounded or kettled, but I don't think people really use the term kettled then, kettled by riot police. and told we are not allowed to leave. So I, again, with a couple of others, was trying to negotiate with the police and saying, what are you talking about? C18 have not turned up. We all want to go home. They told us that we were not allowed to go home. And I think in one of the statements that I've read says that we chose to go on a train to Earls Court.
We can bring that up. That's UCPI 29708. It's behind B7. So this is a report on the Earls Court incident, 18th of January 1994. And page 4 of that we can see here that once the group arrived at Becontree, they discovered that the gig had been cancelled, and their intelligence suggested that there was fighting going on in Bow Road between skinheads and anti-fascists. Negotiations were entered into between Lois Austin and the group's spokesperson and police. And Austin rather naively accepted transport on a special train towards Bow Road to join the fray. What do you say about that? Was there a sense that, oh, yeah, we'll all jump on a train and we'll go down to Bow Road for a fight?
Absolutely not. And that thing about suggesting that there was fighting in Bow Road between skinheads and anti-fascists, I have no recollection of that whatsoever. We wanted to go home, and that is just not true. And then this thing, so I did enter into negotiations with the police to get them to allow us out of this kettle. And then it says naively accepted transport on a special train. It's absolute rubbish towards Bow Road to join the fray. We were told at that point by the police that you cannot leave, you are not leaving this area by any other method than getting on a tube train that we've got for you from Becontree, which is going to take you to Victoria. So we were saying, well, we don't live in Victoria, we don't go to Victoria. They said, that is how you are leaving this area. There was absolutely, it would not have been possible to go to Bow Road because the police had told us that we were going to Victoria. We had no choice. So the police corralled us. And this is really important because this is a real abuse by the police. It really, really is. They corralled us onto a tube train. Once we was on the tube train, the train whizzed through every single station on the district line until it got to Victoria. And the train was packed. Many people were standing. We get to Victoria and the train stops and we think, oh, well, at least we're now getting off at Victoria. They did not open the doors. We could see everybody on the platform looking in, wondering what the hell was going on.
I think Lewis said yesterday that you were banging on the doors, trying to let them know that you were stuck on the train.
Yeah, we were banging on saying the police have imprisoned us on this train. You know, you need to tell people, ring the media, ring politicians and tell them that the police have imprisoned protesters on a train. I'm so glad I've got the opportunity to say all this in this forum. Then they don't. So then the train moves off in Victoria Station and goes to Earls Court. There's some detail that I've missed out actually, because while the train, it's a district line train. While it's going from Becontree, the district line, that part of East London is above ground. So as we're going along from Becontree through those outer East London stations, I think we run parallel. I think it's the A13. Run parallel to a major A road, and the police vans from Becontree were zooming along the A13 alongside us, and it's only at the point at which they all then end up at Earls Court that we realise that they had gone from Becontree and zoomed along, and it was a trap. They had planned it. It was orchestrated. The train goes on from this is such a big example of police misconduct. So the train goes from Victoria to Earls Court. We get off at Earls. They open the doors at Earls Court. I think, Hannah, and with Hannah, we all think, oh, thank God. Well, a bloody long way to get home from Earls Court, but we can get home from Earls Court. So we get off the train. There is riot police everywhere at Earls Court Station on all the platforms. on the escalators, so we start to move off. We're very naive. How naive were we? I just thought, you know, oh, they've brought all these police here. They just want to, you know, make sure we go where we're supposed to be going, go home. As we go up the escalators were lined with right police on one side, so you're on the right and the right police are on the left. Then they run amok in the station and on the platforms, and the British Transport Police was so shocked that the British Transport Police were going, get out the back to people on the platforms. And
So were there any other members of the public in the station at the time when you got off the train?
Not ordinary members of the public. I can't remember. I think it was probably cleared. I can't remember, but I'm absolutely sure. I mean, there were so many of us, but there was British Transport Police. I can remember seeing them, and I can remember them thinking, what the hell's going on here? Then we get, do you want me to carry on?
Yep.
So then we get to the top of the escalators. I've got these right police on the side of me, one big blonde fella grinning at me. We get to the top. There's already right police at the top of the station running amok and hitting people with truncheons on the top of the head. Then they pull open the gates and we run out onto the road at Earl's Court in front of the station. I run out. And
so when sorry to interrupt, when you say they pulled open the gates,
yeah,
had the gates at the top of the escalators, the general exit, that had been
that
closed?
Had been closed. So again, blocking exits. So everyone comes up the escalator. People are in the top of the station where the ticket machines or whatever are. The right police are running around hitting people, very young people, teenage girls and stuff. Then they open the doors. We all rush out. We turn to look back in, and then they shut the doors again, and they're hitting people inside. And then I was on the megaphone saying, open the doors, let people out. This is dangerous, open the doors. Then they open the doors, and then they charge us again. And that's when I got battered. So they charge huge men. I'm not talking about little tiny Paul Herons. I'm talking about big men with batons and riot shields.
So were these riot police,
Riot police.
or were these uniformed
They
police?
were riot police, and they charge us, and I got whacked on the top of the head with a truncheon. Why are police hitting protesters on the top of the head with truncheons?
Was there violence coming from the protesters?
No.
From the train towards the police?
No. We were going home. We were relaxed. We thought it was all over. Our stewards, that have got this huge reputation, were all relaxed and chilled. We thought it was the end of the day. In fact, how naive were we?
In terms of Lewis's evidence yesterday, he said pulling out from Victoria, by that time at least,
Yeah.
there was a definite sense of discomfort on the train, to put
Yeah.
it mildly. People were very unsure about what was happening. You're saying people were calm. Was it a sense of a relief that you were actually going to get off the train at some point?
Well,
or?
once they let us off, I mean, when you're on a train and you're packed in and there's no announcements, it doesn't stop apart from at Victoria, but then it moves on again. We're thinking, what the hell's going on? And by this time, load of it hadn't been to the toilet for a very long time, didn't have water. So we're all thinking, what the hell's going on? Once we got off the train, we did think, oh, it's the end. They finally let us off, we can go home. So we was all relaxed. We're going up the escalators, and I remember thinking, oh, this is a bit odd. Why are they all here? What are they doing here? I can only say we were naive. I mean, because we should have been thinking, they're all here. They followed us. They're in full riot gear. We've got nothing but bags of leaflets. So we get, as I said, so then we get to the top, the doors open and close. I'm outside, I'm looking back in, saying open the doors. Then they rush forward, and as they rush, I reckon a dozen riot police went for me, and I get whacked on top of the head, blood streaming down my face. I fall to the ground. My friend Julie, who's mentioned in my witness statement, Julie Donovan, jumps on top of me and starts screaming, leave her alone, get off her. And then they were punching me and kicking me and whacking me. 12, and I get upset when I talk about it because it's very distressing, 12 huge, great big police, and it is, when I think about it now, it's utterly disgraceful that went on, and it went on in darkness. I think it was deliberate. They took us from Beacon Tree to Earls Court, and when it got dark, we all got beaten up. And then my friend Judy took me into like a sort of Turkish, North African...
You say it was dark. I'm just thinking about the timing. So you said it was about 1 or 2 o'clock when you were in Beacon Tree.
Yeah.
By the time you were corralled, put on the train, by the time you got out at Earls Court, obviously this is January, so it's getting dark by that time. Is that right? But presumably the train station and the street outside was lit. Was there not lighting? What do you mean by it was dark?
Yeah, it was lit, but it was dark. It was a dark night. It was a January evening, and I can remember it very, very vividly because I was supposed to be meeting my parents at the ballet to see the Nutcracker. The big joke after that was Lois was meant to be at the Nutcracker, but she ended up getting her nut cracked, which wasn't so funny. It's funny now.
And you're quite clear in your statement that you felt that you were directly targeted. What specifically was it that made you feel you were directly targeted?
So I was targeted because the police at the start of the day were calling out my name, and we know all about you, Louise, we know all about you. When I'm going up the escalator, I've got a policeman grinning at me, and then when we get to the top, when they rush out, a gang of them rush towards me and they bash me to the floor. They were beating up other people, but they made a beeline for me, and I'm absolutely convinced of it. And
Is
also,
that
can I
because
say one last thing about my steward? Because I did have a steward assigned to me all day, Dan Gilman, and he's going to give evidence, I know, this afternoon. And Dan had been arrested just before I got attacked. And I don't think that was an accident. I think that because in Welling, I had stewards who jumped on my back every time the police tried to attack me, and they protected me. And Dan was, on that day, I said to Dan, you stick with me, and, you know, if the police try to batter me with a truncheon, can you be there, please, and try and stop it from happening?
Do you think you were targeted because of who you were, because you were Lois Austin, or did you still have the high-vis vest on and the megaphone? Were you shouting things to the crowd that maybe drew their attention to you?
I was shouting. I don't know if I still had a high-vis vest on. I don't know if I did, but I did have a megaphone. But we hadn't been using it. We'd been on a train. It was down at my arm like this. I was just carrying it home. But I only used it again when I got out of the tube station. I looked back in. They closed the gates, and then I used it to say, "Open the gates. Open the gates. It's dangerous. It's dangerous. Open the gates. Let people out." And that's the only time I used it again. But I think they targeted me because I was a leader of the YRE, because I was organising all this stuff, and they wanted to intimidate me, get me out the way and stop me from doing it. And again, that's political policing. That's outrageous in a democratic society. Why are we not allowed to protest without being in fear of our lives in terms of police brutality? It's, you know, and why are they targeting leaders of campaigns like YRE and ANL? It's utterly disgraceful. Women, me and Julie Watson. Julie Watson's 5 foot, I'm 5'4", and I was attacked by 12 guys. And while they was attacking me, the last thing I'll say, it's all right.
It's all right. It's absolutely fine to have your evidence, but we are limited on time.
While they were battering me, so they were booting me, kicking me and whacking me with truncheons, and while they were doing it, they were calling me an effing cunt, an effing slag, calling me the worst misogynistic, sexist, abusist names you could possibly imagine. And we know now that that it's been proven that there's institutional sexism as well as racism in the Metropolitan Police. I know it's absolutely nothing to the intimate sexual relationships that my comrades over there and others have had to, put through. It's nothing compared to that. But it was still extremely abusive and upsetting. And I ended up in hospital, getting my head glued back together. And I can remember being in Chelsea and Westminster Hospital, and about 30 protesters all lined up with head injuries. Why are the Metropolitan Police whacking people across the top of the head, because they will kill somebody. Lindsay German in her evidence said she's been on demonstrations where 2 people were killed. Why are they whacking people across the top of the heads? By the way, that's why we had to wear hard hats, to protect our heads from the riot police. And I remember a nurse...
Is that something that came in after?
It came in after May the 8th. That's why we've got hard hats on at Welling too. But when I was in Chelsea...
Had you been wearing hard hats? Sorry to go
At Earls
back,
Court?
but no, at Brick Lane.
No, I don't think we were. I don't think we were, because I think we were probably weren't... It was an occupation of an area. I don't think we was expecting anything to happen there. But I just want to make a point about...
In terms of helmets, did you have a helmet at Brick Lane, or did you pick up a helmet, or were the BNP people wearing helmets?
No, I think I can remember one BNP member opposite us. One was waving a camera around, taking photographs of us, and one was waving his motorbike helmet around.
Was it a white one? Was it a white one that we saw on the video? It was just on the floor on the video.
I can't remember. I think so. You might have to show me the video again.
If-
But the point I was going to make about Chelsea and Westminster Hospital is the nurse who glued my head back together again said to me, why are the police hitting people across the top of the head? Do they not know they will kill somebody doing that?
In terms of Earls Court, I think you brought a civil action, didn't you, against the police, and that was found in your favour.
Yeah, so Sadiq Khan, Louise Christian and then Sadiq Khan, who's now Mayor of London, were my lawyers at the time. And I got a settlement, yeah.
Okay. I want to move on now to instances where you are reported on personally, other instances not to do with public order. The first one is behind tab B41, and that's MPS 0246670 at page 1. Sorry, just before we move off from Earls Court, can I go back to the document we were in before? If you need the... Oh, you've got it, yeah. Just wanted to ask you about this. Halfway down that first paragraph, it says, once the train, dubbed the Red Express, probably reference to communism, is it? The redness or socialism?
You're dubbed by which train? The train that the police put us on?
Put you on.
Yeah, we never dubbed it that. I think that's
the police dubbing
that's
it.
police banter, backroom banter, yeah.
Once the train dubbed the Red Express arrived and the demonstrators, including a number of A&L activists who were in the vicinity, had boarded it, it became clear that the police had no intention of delivering their charges to Bow Road, and the train went non-stop to Earls Court. There was some confrontation with police at Earls Court station, and at least 7 members of the group, including Lois Austin, sustained injuries. And then it goes on to say the special train ploy to remove this violent group was brilliantly conceived and executed, but it will not work again. The sense that it was a ploy by the police to get a violent group out of Beacon Tree, what do you say about that?
We were not a violent group. There was no violence. We had a huge, big, peaceful demonstration. We were kettled, we were corralled and forced onto a train. Bow Road was never part of, I do not even remember that. It was always that this
And it goes on, the SDS were able to provide intelligence about these people and organisations. Peter Francis was of particular assistance with regard to militant Labour's hierarchy. And it goes on to mention the fact that information was provided following on from your support of Lisa Tusher for her application for leave to remain. So again, a specific, comprehensive made in relation to you, your activity within YRE. These are special branch reports and information by the Home Office used for an alternative purpose, immigration purpose, is being compiled in relation to you. Do you want to comment briefly on that?
Why are undercover officers linking up with other government departments and giving them information? I find it as worrying, for example, as undercover officers, so special branch, colluding with private sector blacklisting organisations and giving them information about some of our members and activists. I think it shouldn't have happened. I think the inquiry needs to investigate it.
I'd like to move on then to general reporting on YRE and Militant, or the Socialist Party as it was known from 1996. There are numerous reports that have been disclosed to you that you make reference to paragraph 5.6 of your witness statement. I just want to refer to a few of them just to see the type of reports that were being submitted in relation to you and your group. The first I'd like to display is MPS 074874. It's behind tab B28. It's an event performer from the 7th of November 1994, and it concerns the London Militant Labour Conference, and it essentially provides details of the organisational setup, campaigns, resolutions, and resolutions passed. This is the document I think we referred to earlier.
Yeah.
074874. Behind tab 28. Zero seven four five. Oh, sorry, 45. 07458774. So I missed out the 5. Thank you. So just if we can run through this document. It's a 6-page report. We can see it's Militant Labour. It's a conference. We've looked at it in relation to Resolution 5, which was on page 3. We can see it looks at elections. Next page. Campaigns. The next page. Talks about youth against racism in Europe. And over the next page. And student work, and we can see a list of names. You're at the top, and there's a list of further names. And the last page then, please. You can see who attended. The next document. Oh, sorry, if we can go back, please, to page 6. We can see that the last paragraph of the report, in conclusion, a debate of some interest took place on the Sunday afternoon when the question was raised as to whether ML should conceal the fact that it is really a revolutionary group bent on the overthrow of the capitalist state, given its relationship with the Labour Party had been severed so unceremoniously. It was perhaps no surprise when it was decided that the message should be shouted from the rooftops in true Trotskyist tradition. this, apart from the weekend, offered little to. Sorry, this apart, the weekend offered little to interest a normal person. Little of interest, apart from the fact that you've decided as a group to shout about your intent to overthrow the capitalist state. What do you say about that?
Well, there was a point, I'm not sure what year, I know you said it, what year this was, but there was a point when militants...
It's November 1994.
94, yeah, when so we had left the Labour Party probably 91, 92, and there was a point at which in the early mid-90s that we said, right, okay, we need to launch as an open socialist organisation, recruit and build that organisation in its own right. And I'm a socialist, and the Socialist Party is a socialist organisation, and we want a transformation of society. I don't think there's anyone in this room that doesn't agree that there's something wrong with the society that we live in when the Middle East is in flames, and there's environmental destruction and 9 million people in this country live in poverty. So we do want to change society, and we want a socialist society, and there's many struggles on the way, we think, to getting that, which are campaigns against racism, campaigns for jobs, campaigns to build council housing,
and
to
that's what these
alleviate all of those
reports
problems.
were on, isn't it? These reports were showing that this is the sort of thing you were reporting on. I want to move on because we're coming close to lunchtime. If I can show the next document, which is UCPI 37223. It's a document that was added into the bundle. It's A Roman numeral 1. It's a gist. And we can see that in late 1995, the Security Service and MPS discussed militant labour and youth against racism in Europe. In November 1995, the Security Service provided MPS with a list of individuals in Militant Labour HQ, some of whom were linked with our YRE. The Security Service requested details and comments. In August 1996, following receipt of a report from MPS, the Security Service provided comments on the information contained in that report, and the Security Service also provided MPS with another list of individuals within Militant Labour HQ. At that time, the Security Service emphasised that public order was the domain of the police. The individuals on whom Peter Francis reported included Lois Austin, Judy Bayshon, Privacy, Francis Curran, Lisa Teuscher, Dan Gilman. At this point, in late 1995, they're still looking for individuals who are linked to militant. What do you say about that?
So this is a security service asking Special Branch, SDS, to get information on members of the militant. Yeah, well, I think it's outrageous. I think there's nothing in our paper, in our magazines, that doesn't say exactly what we are, who we are, and what we stand for, and why we want people to join us. And again, it's political policing, and it's the state, the security services, operating in an unbiased, in a biased way, in a way that's not neutral. Why are the security services getting involved with Special Branch to infiltrate and subvert organisations which are supposed to be tolerated in a democratic society? I think it's outrageous, and I think it needs to be investigated.
Which we are doing as part of the inquiry.
Yeah, but MI5 aren't here, are they? They're giving evidence?
Well, if I can move on, we don't have that much longer.
They should be.
Behind tab B33, UCPI 34435. Page 3, please. This is a Militant Labour annual conference in Morecambe. It's the 6th of February 1996. And again, it's reporting on the inner workings of the group. Page 7, please, relates to British perspectives. And we can see under the title, about halfway down, British Perspectives, Youth Work, there's reference to Hannah Sell, Lois Austin. And it says that the session was notable only because it contained the only reference to Black and Asian activity or race issues of the entire conference. And if we can go to a further document behind tab 36, UCPI 0246222. That's UCPI 246222. Sorry, MPS 0246. This is a YRE conference in London on the 30th of March 1996. The date of the report is the 1st of May 96. And we can see here, paragraph 3, that YRE has 5 separate campaigns. It's an anti-Nazi, anti-British National Party campaign, a campaign against the Immigration and Asylum Bill, justice campaigns, a Show Racism in Football the Red Card campaign, and racism in schools. In relation to the justice campaigns, in support of those who have suffered at the hands of the police and or the judiciary, that was the 3rd campaign. It suggests that militant Labour leaders view that as largely pointless, but it can't be ignored. These are largely campaigns that address racism in the community, and this is the a principal area that the SDS have chosen to infiltrate. What do you say about that, very briefly, please?
What, that the SDS have chosen to infiltrate justice campaigns?
No, that they're reporting on YRE, who campaigns on these issues.
Well, again, why are they reporting on YRE that campaigns on these issues? It was completely right. YRE was an anti-racist organisation. They were family campaigns such as Roland Adams' campaign, Stephen Lawrence campaign, although we weren't directly involved in that, but you know, we did talk about it at meetings and events. There were other justice campaigns like M25-3, the Oliver Campbell campaign, who has since been completely acquitted, by the way, and we campaigned for him. We said it was a miscarriage of justice. It was right that YRE did that work, and you know, we supported the Winston Silcott family campaign. I addressed many meetings alongside George Silcott, Winston Silcott's brother.
So that was primarily your focus, and it was young people largely, was it, that were focusing on these issues?
It wasn't primarily. It was part of what YRE was doing. We were also doing the Schools Pact. We set up Show Racism the Red Card, which is now the #1 anti-racist campaign on the football grounds, and that was a fantastic campaign that really tried to target where organised far-right and fascist groups were trying to recruit young men to their cause. We set that campaign up to counter them.
Thank you very much. I'm going to have to move on.
Okay.
The last thing I want to talk to you about, or ask you about, are some of the general allegations against Peter Francis. So,
okay.
Very quickly, there's what you say in your witness statement at paragraph 12.2 is that when Peter Francis was withdrawing from the group, the Hackney branch of Militant Labour arranged a collection for him to raise money for him to buy furniture because he seemed a bit down and out, effectively. Yeah. But in his witness statement, and we can bring this up, it's UCPI 36012 at page 101, paragraph 614. His account is, he explains that he sold the contents of his cover flat together with items he claimed to have stolen from his cover employer at a Hackney car boot sale and gave all of the proceeds to Militant. Isn't that what happened? That's why he didn't have furniture at the time, because he sold it all off, he was moving away, and he gave the proceeds to Militant.
I don't know about that, and I don't think that's true. You'll have to ask him. I don't think that's true. My recollection, and I wasn't directly involved in Hackney, was that everybody felt sorry for him, that they thought that he was, as you say, down on his luck. He didn't have much money. He was having a personal crisis. And when they went into his flat and it was bare and he had hardly anything, they had a collection for him. And I think he even talks about what nice people they all were in Hackney, and they gave him a card and everything else. So I don't know anything about him. I gave all the proceeds of the sale to Militant and then took off on the run.
You can't
I
help
don't
us
know
with
if
that.
that's true, if he gave
In
any
terms
proceeds.
of whether Peter Francis had a sexual relationship, were you aware if he was in a sexual relationship with somebody or had sex with members of the militant group or YRE group?
No, not aware of. No, not at all.
If you weren't aware that he had sex with people, did that lead you to be suspicious about him? That perhaps he wasn't who he said he was, or perhaps he was a state agent?
No, not at all. That is ridiculous. The idea that I or anybody else in the leadership of YRE or Militant knew about the sex lives and who was having sex with who is ridiculous. And we're a very, very working class organisation full of ordinary people in trade unions and things like that. I have seen reports about the Wearies being promiscuous and all of that. The undercovers have said that, and if you weren't having lots of sex, then your cover would be blown. What's absolute and utter nonsense. I would not have even known if he was having sex or who he was and was not having sex with, and it wouldn't have interested me in the slightest. It does interest me if he was an undercover officer infiltrating our organisation and deceiving women into intimate sexual relationships. That's abuse. That would interest me, but I have no evidence of that. I don't know if that happened.
Did you know where his cover employment was? Did you know he worked at a school?
I think I sort of knew that at the time, and when I've read these documents, it's made me think, oh yes, I sort of knew that.
Okay.
But I can't.
Did you ever have to get in touch with him when he wasn't at the branch office? Did you go to his home? Did you call him on his landline?
No.
What did you do if you needed to get in touch with Peter Francis?
Well, I never needed to get in touch with him directly.
So
I
you
would have
can't
gone
help
through
us
the
with
Hackney branch, and they would have mobilised their Hackney people.
Do you accept that there are some things that Peter Francis says are true and have been proven to be true and have been exposed as part of this inquiry and as part of his whistleblowing?
I think when he says we were very nice people, I think he says that, doesn't he? And he was touched. I think that's true. I'm trying to think. I can't. Not really. I think I would say that reading his statement, his witness statement, that it's exaggerated, that he tries to present us as a big, or lots of us, or some of us as violent and needed to be reported on. I think that is a wild exaggeration. That is not true.
But he certainly reported on you. There was an SDS. He was managed by people within the back office. There were other officers. There were people who were having relationships. There's a lot of what he says that's true. Do you accept that?
Yeah, I do, and you know, it's a difficult for us. It's difficult because on the one hand, he was a whistleblower that has done a service to all of us and the public, because he's blown the whistle on all these terrible abuses and things that have happened. So for that, we are grateful, but we cannot let the things that he has said about us, like being violent and confrontational and looking for trouble and dawn raids, we cannot allow that stuff, which is simply not true, and either an exaggeration or untrue, and used to justify his deployment. We can't allow that to go unanswered.
Do you not see that as an inconsistency, that you can't cherry pick his evidence?
Well, I think the problem we've got is his evidence is inconsistent. At times he says we're not violent, and then at other times he says that we were violent. And I think a lot of his evidence is unreliable. That doesn't mean to say that some of the other stuff that he's said is untrue. He's said stuff about the targets of the SDS. He says stuff about
Okay.
what MI5 asked him to do.
We've got his evidence which we can look
Yeah.
at. Miss Austin, those are the questions I have for you. Obviously, there is another area of your evidence which relates to the May Day 2001 demonstration and your civil claim after that in 2005, and in particular in relation to Carlo Sirachi, and that is something you will be coming back to the inquiry to give evidence about in phase 2.
Yeah.
So given those are all the questions I have for Miss Austin, it may be that we have a very short break to see if there are any more, or we come back after lunch and have very short evidence from Miss Austin if there are any further questions.
Well, on the whole, there haven't been Rule 10 questions arising of non-state witnesses, but I appreciate that there are one or two undercover officers who are separately represented who may have questions to put. Is there going to be any re-examination?
Highly unlikely, sir.
Yes. In which case, what I suggest we do is break for 5 minutes to see if there are any Rule 10 questions. If there aren't, then we will adjourn for lunch.
I'm very sorry for going over the,
No,
the
don't
normal
worry.
lunch break time.
But I'll rise for 5 minutes and then come back in.
Thank you.
All rise.
One question.
Yes.
It's really a point of clarification. When I asked you about your knowledge, if at all, of a plan to burn down the BNP headquarters in Welling, I want to clarify that it was suggested by HM43 that it was a class war plan, not a YRE plan. Do you appreciate that? That I wasn't asking you whether YRE had a plan to burn down the bookshop.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, I accept that was the question, and I had no knowledge of a class war plan to burn down the BNP headquarters bookshop.
And HM43 has never suggested that it was YRE that planned to do that.
Okay.
Do you accept that?
And I had no idea of any plan like that. And actually, I think class war were probably not even seriously putting that forward, because I think Lewis described yesterday their magazine being the sort of Beano of the left.
We heard Lewis's
Eat
evidence
the rich,
about that.
yeah, and stuff like that. So nobody really took them seriously, but also they would have understood that it would have been impossible to do anything like that, because there were 7,000 riot police, police on horses, police on motorbikes, and that was never going to happen. If a plan like that had come to my attention, I would have said, you are not doing that in my community. There's residential houses either side, and I know people who live there, and in fact my nephews live in the road opposite and go to the local primary school. That is not happening, and that is not how we're going to win this fight. This is a political struggle to get them out of our area, and I would have said, don't do it.
Thank you very much. So the only other point of clarification is just the pronunciation of Carlo Sorachi's name that I had got wrong during the course of my questioning.
Yes. If we get everybody's names correct, I would be astonished. Thank you very much for coming to give evidence this morning. As you know, I'm going to ask you to come back later to give evidence about the kettling incident on May Day 2001 and the litigation that you brought arising out of it, where it seems that information was provided by Carlo Sorachi to those instructed by the Metropolitan Police Commissioner.
Yeah.
And I'd be grateful if you would assist with that
Yeah,
in due course.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. We will now adjourn until 2:10. I hope that gives everybody time enough to have lunch.